We are living through a transformation in the structure of human attention. For most of history, the greatest threats to survival were famine, plague, and war. Today, a new threat has emerged, quieter but equally powerful, the erosion of attention. The modern world does not starve the body as often as it starves the mind. It does not conquer territory, it colonizes consciousness. Never before have human beings been exposed to such a relentless stream of information. Billions of messages circulate every hour. News updates never sleep. Opinions multiply faster than facts. The average individual now consumes more information in a single day than many of our ancestors encountered in a lifetime. Yet paradoxically, the increase in information has not produced a proportional increase in understanding. Instead, it has generated noise. Noise is not simply sound. Noise is irrelevant, manipulative, or excessive information that overwhelms our cognitive capacity. Human brains evolved in environments where information was scarce and slow. A rustle in the bushes might signal danger. A change in the sky might predict weather. Attention was selective and precious because survival depended on filtering wisely. Today, the filtering mechanisms are outsourced to algorithms, whose primary objective is not your well-being, but your engagement. The system rewards intensity, not accuracy. Content that provokes anger, fear, or excitement spreads more rapidly than content that encourages reflection. Calm analysis struggles to compete with emotional stimulation. The result is a civilization saturated with signals yet starving for clarity. When everything demands attention, nothing truly receives it. Clarity has become rare not because truth has disappeared, but because silence has disappeared. To think clearly requires time, patience, and mental space. But modern systems monetize interruption. Each notification fragments the mind. Each headline competes for urgency. Each trend pressures individuals to respond immediately rather than thoughtfully. Reaction replaces reflection. The wisest individuals recognize this dynamic. They understand that constant exposure to noise reshapes the brain. Neuroscience shows that repeated distraction weakens the capacity for sustained focus. Attention becomes shallow, fragmented, reactive. Over time, the ability to engage in deep thinking diminishes. This is not a moral failure. It is a biological response to environmental conditions. Consider the implication. Complex problems, climate change, artificial intelligence, economic inequality cannot be understood through fragmented attention. They require long chains of reasoning, historical context, and interdisciplinary thinking. If society loses its capacity for depth, it loses its capacity for solutions. The age of noise is therefore not merely inconvenient. It is dangerous. But within this environment, a counter-movement emerges. Some individuals choose to step back. They limit exposure. They cultivate silence. This is not an act of ignorance, but an act of preservation. They understand that clarity is an asset more valuable than information. In a marketplace flooded with opinions, discernment becomes power. Clarity is not simply knowing facts. It is the ability to distinguish signal from noise. It is the discipline to question sources. It is the patience to withhold judgment until evidence accumulates. It is the courage to say, I do not know, in a culture that rewards instant certainty. Such qualities require mental stability, and stability requires boundaries. The age of clarity does not mean rejecting technology. It means mastering its influence. Tools are not inherently harmful unconscious usages. The same networks that spread misinformation can also distribute knowledge. The same devices that distract can also educate. The determining factor is intention. Without intention, attention is captured. With intention, attention becomes directed. Historically, power belonged to those who controlled resources. Today, those who control flows of information shape perception. And perception shapes reality. If millions believe something to be true, it influences markets, elections, and social movements regardless of its factual basis. Therefore, protecting one's mental environment becomes a civic responsibility as much as a personal one. In the age of noise, silence is not emptiness. It is infrastructure. It is the foundation upon which understanding is built. When individuals deliberately create spaces free from constant input, they allow ideas to mature. Reflection transforms data into wisdom. Without reflection, information remains raw and volatile. The paradox of our time is that access to knowledge has never been greater, yet the ability to synthesize it has rarely been weaker. Knowledge requires connecting past to present, cause to effect, action to consequence. Noise disrupts these connections by accelerating tempo. Speed compresses complexity into slogans. Nuance disappears under pressure for immediacy. The wisest people sense this compression and resist it. They choose long-form reading over fragmented snippets. They engage in sustained dialogue rather than rapid exchanges. They protect hours of uninterrupted thought. In doing so, they cultivate a cognitive advantage. They see patterns where others see chaos. Clarity does not emerge spontaneously. It must be engineered internally. Just as societies build physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, power grids, individuals must build mental infrastructure. Habits of focus, critical thinking, and introspection form this structure. Without it, external noise penetrates easily. With it, external noise is filtered. This brings us to a second dimension of withdrawal, the experience of isolation among intelligent individuals in contemporary society. Intelligence today often produces discomfort rather than status. Those who examine systems critically may find themselves alienated from dominant narratives. When public discourse is polarized and emotionally charged, nuance appears suspicious. Moderate voices are dismissed as weak, complex explanations are criticized as evasive. Intelligent individuals perceive contradictions. They recognize oversimplification. They see how economic incentives shape media narratives, how political incentives shape public statements, how technological incentives shape behavior. Such awareness can create distance from mainstream enthusiasm. When crowds celebrate immediate gratification, those who value long-term consequences may feel out of place. Isolation, in this context, is not necessarily social withdrawal but cognitive separation. It is the realization that participating fully in prevailing patterns may require intellectual compromise. May choose not to compromise. They reduce engagement not because they despise society but because they seek integrity. Throughout history, thinkers who question dominant paradigms often experience isolation. Scientific revolutions rarely began with majority approval. Philosophical breakthroughs often emerged from individuals willing to think independently. Today, independent thinking can feel even more isolating because digital platforms amplify conformity through metrics like shares, followers. Popularity becomes visible in real time. Deviating from majority sentiment carries immediate social cost. The psychological pressure to conform is ancient. Humans evolved as social animals. Belonging increased survival chances. Rejection threatened existence. Modern environments exploit this evolutionary vulnerability. Social feedback loops trigger dopamine responses. Approval becomes addictive. Disapproval becomes painful. In such systems, speaking uncomfortable truths requires resilience. The wisest individuals understand these mechanisms. They recognize that emotional discomfort does not necessarily indicate error. Sometimes it indicates independence. Withdrawing from constant social validation reduces the influence of these pressures. It allows beliefs to be evaluated based on evidence rather than applause. However, this withdrawal can produce loneliness. When conversations remain superficial and driven by trends, deeper discussions become rare. Intelligent individuals may struggle to find spaces for meaningful exchange. Yet, this challenge also presents opportunity. It encourages the creation of smaller, intentional communities grounded in inquiry rather than performance. Intelligence, properly understood, is not accumulation of facts but adaptability of thought. It is the capacity to update beliefs when presented with new evidence. In highly polarized environments, updating beliefs is interpreted as weakness. Changing one's mind may be seen as betrayal. Consequently, rigid certainty dominates discourse. Those who value flexibility may step back from arenas where rigidity prevails. Withdrawal, therefore, becomes a strategy for preserving cognitive flexibility. It creates room for slow thinking in a fast-thinking world. Psychologists distinguish between rapid, intuitive judgments and slower, analytical reasoning. Both have value. But when rapid judgments dominate continuously, analytical reasoning deteriorates. Intelligent individuals sense this imbalance and seek environments that restore equilibrium. Isolation can also emerge from awareness of global challenges. Understanding the scale of ecological degradation, technological disruption, and geopolitical tension can be overwhelming. While many cope through denial or distraction, those who confront realities directly may experience existential weight. Stepping back from constant exposure becomes a means of maintaining psychological health. Importantly, withdrawal does not imply superiority. It reflects sensitivity. Just as certain organisms respond acutely to environmental toxins, certain minds respond acutely to informational toxicity. Sensitivity can be a burden, but it can also be strength. It enables early detection of problems. It fosters empathy. It encourages foresight. The challenge is transforming isolation into insight rather than cynicism. When intelligent individuals disengage entirely, society loses valuable perspectives. But when they withdraw, strategically reducing noise, while maintaining purpose, they preserve energy for meaningful contribution. Depth requires conservation. In a culture that equates visibility with value, choosing invisibility can feel counterintuitive. Yet, many transformative ideas germinate away from public attention. Intellectual breakthroughs often require solitude. Emotional maturity often develops in reflection. By stepping back from constant exposure, individuals protect the conditions necessary for growth. The age of noise rewards reaction. The age of clarity rewards reflection. Intelligent withdrawal is not abandonment of society, it is recalibration of engagement. It is recognition that to contribute wisely, one must first think clearly. And to think clearly in the modern world requires deliberate separation from forces designed to fragment the mind. We are entering a phase of human history in which the greatest vulnerability is not physical weakness but cognitive fragmentation. In previous centuries, power was exercised by controlling territory, food supplies, and labor. Today, power increasingly operates by shaping perception. And perception is shaped by attention. When attention is fragmented, perception becomes distorted. When perception is distorted, freedom becomes fragile. The digital revolution promised unlimited access to information. What it delivered was unlimited competition for attention. Every platform is designed not simply to inform you, but to capture you. The architecture of the modern digital environment is not neutral. It is engineered around psychological triggers refined through data analysis of billions of behavioral patterns. Each click, pause, and swipe feeds back into systems that learn how to hold you longer. The goal is not your understanding. The goal is your engagement. This has profound consequences. For most of human evolution, attention was guided by immediate survival needs. You focused on threats, food, social bonds. Now, your nervous system reacts to abstract stimuli, numbers on a screen, opinions of strangers, carefully curated images. The ancient brain confronts a hypermodern environment. It was not designed for endless novelty. Yet novelty is precisely what drives digital platforms. Every scroll promises something new, something urgent, something emotionally stimulating. The result is a perpetual state of low-grade distraction. You rarely descend into deep thought because you are continuously interrupted. Even when no notification arrives, the possibility of one hovers in your awareness. Anticipation itself fragments concentration. Over time, this weakens your capacity for sustained focus. And without sustained focus, complex thinking deteriorates. The most dangerous effect is not that you know less. It is that you think less deeply. Superficial familiarity replaces genuine understanding. Headlines replace analysis. Reactions replace reflection. In such an environment, wisdom becomes rare not because information is scarce, but because attention is scattered. The wisest individuals recognize this structural shift. They understand that distraction is not merely a personal failing, it is an economic model. If a platform is free, your attention is the product. The longer you remain emotionally engaged, the more valuable you become to advertisers and data brokers. Anger and fear extend engagement. Calm reasoning shortens it. Therefore, outrage spreads more efficiently than nuance. When you feel compelled to react instantly to every development, you are participating in a system that rewards impulsivity. Yet complex realities require patience. Political conflicts, technological transformations, ecological crises, none of these can be understood through rapid emotional responses. They demand context. They demand sustained inquiry. And sustained inquiry demands focus. This is why intelligent withdrawal emerges as a rational strategy. It is not about abandoning society. It is about refusing to surrender your cognitive autonomy. To withdraw is to create boundaries around your attention. It is to decide deliberately what deserves your mental energy. Historically, forms of withdrawal have always accompanied periods of upheaval. Philosophers retreated from political turmoil to cultivate thought. Scientists isolated themselves to conduct experiments. Artists sought solitude to create. Withdrawal has often preceded innovation. Not because isolation is inherently superior, but because deep work requires insulation from noise. Today, the noise is amplified beyond precedent. You carry it in your pocket. You sleep beside it. It awakens with you. To withdraw, therefore, requires conscious discipline. It may mean limiting exposure to algorithmically curated feeds. It may mean scheduling periods of uninterrupted study. It may mean tolerating boredom rather than anesthetizing it with constant stimulation. Boredom, in fact, is a misunderstood cognitive state. When external stimuli decrease, the mind begins to wander internally. Connections form between distant ideas. Creativity often emerges in such moments. Yet modern culture treats boredom as an emergency to be eliminated instantly. The moment silence appears, we fill it. But in eliminating boredom, we also eliminate the incubation period of insight. Withdrawal restores that incubation. It allows thoughts to mature rather than being replaced every few seconds. It strengthens the neural circuits associated with sustained attention. Over time, this cultivates resilience against manipulation. When you can focus deeply, you are less reactive. When you are less reactive, you are harder to control. This has political implications. Democracies rely on citizens capable of evaluating information critically. If attention spans shrink and emotional volatility increases, public discourse deteriorates. Simplistic narratives dominate because they require less cognitive effort. Complex trade-offs are ignored because they demand patience. Withdrawal, in this sense, becomes a civic responsibility. By strengthening your capacity for depth, you contribute to a healthier intellectual ecosystem. There is also a personal dimension. Constant digital engagement fragments identity. You present curated versions of yourself across platforms. You compare your internal experience to others. External highlights. This generates subtle dissatisfaction. You measure worth through metrics like shares, followers. But metrics quantify visibility, not value. The wisest individuals step back from this metric-driven psychology. They understand that meaning cannot be optimized like engagement rates. Meaning develops through sustained relationships, long-term projects, and inner coherence. These require time free from interruption. To withdraw is to reclaim time. And time is the fundamental resource of existence. Each moment spent reacting automatically is a moment not spent choosing deliberately. The difference between reaction and choice defines the boundary between manipulation and autonomy. Consider how rapidly technological systems evolve. Artificial intelligence increasingly predicts preferences, suggests decisions, and automates tasks. Prediction relies on patterns. If your behavior is predictable, it becomes easier to influence. But unpredictability emerges from reflection. When you pause and examine your impulses before acting, you disrupt automated prediction models. Reflection introduces freedom. Intelligent withdrawal cultivates that pause. It inserts space between stimulus and response. In that space, agency resides. This does not imply rejecting technology. Technology is neither inherently liberating nor inherently oppressive. Its impact depends on how it is integrated into human life.